Hi, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to talk about SQL Aggregate Functions, and we're going to talk about the components of the aggregate functions, and we're going to provide some examples of how to use it. Before we start, please remember to subscribe to my channel to help support it and to get notification on future videos. So what are the aggregate functions parts and components that you have to keep in mind when you are using them? So with the function itself, so you might want to sum a couple of values. You want to get the maximum or minimum value of within a table, like you want to get the maximum invoice, you want to get the minimum invoice, you want to get the average hours worked by employees, and so forth. When you are using an aggregate function, you have to decide what are you trying to aggregate. So are you going to sum the total value of sales for a specific customer? So the column, are you aggregating on a customer? So that's what we mean by group by, and that's what we're going to cover in our next example. And when to use the having condition. And having, you can think of it similar to the where clause, where we use it to filter down the aggregate function. So these are the main components when you're using the aggregate function, and let's see how we can use it within our statement. So over here we have our customer tables and customer invoices, and let's link the customer table and customer invoices. These are our customers. I'm going to give a name C for my customer table. And then I'm going to link it to my invoice table on the customer ID. So let's get the total sales for my customer. So let's get the customer ID, customer name, and then let's sum the total of invoices for my customer. I want to see like how much this customer bought from me. So if I run this statement, it's going to give me an error because it's an essential thing to use the group by in my statement if I have any other column than my aggregate function in my statement. And over here, like you can see, I use the customer name, ID, and name. So it's a good practice that always have the aggregate function at the last of your list of selected statement, but it's not a mandatory thing. So if I ran the statement as I said, I'm going to get an error. See, it says like it has to be aggregated by the lists, and it's usually all the columns that does not have any aggregate function around it. So if I ran this, then now let's run the statement, and now I can see every customer with the total sales that they have. So let's call this column total sales. Okay, let's run it again. And here's my total sales. So that means that these are the total sales for my customer. So what if I want to have the total sales within a specific year? So I have like multiple years in this database. So I want to see the total sales per year. So I'm going to use the invoice date, and I'm going to get the date part, the year, the date part year of my invoice date. So let's see, like use the date part, and then I'm going to give this as invoice date, give the name as invoice date. And as I said, if I run the statement, it's going to give me an error. So let's take the date part and put it over here to represent my invoice date. And let's order by customer ID and year so we can see the change in sales for every customer within or across the years. So you can see customer number one, he bought this amount on the first year, second year, and third year. So what if my requirement is to display only customers who crossed $100,000 within a specific year, so I can focus more on these customers and provide them better service? So at this point, that's where I will need to use the having clause. Okay, so I'm going to say having, and then sum of my invoice total greater than $100,000. Let's run the statement now. And we're going to see that customer number one, remember he had 4 records before. Now he has only 2 records because on these 2 years only, he crossed $100,000. So maybe now this customer has a good potential and I can start working on this customer. So these are the main components, as I said, of an aggregate function. Let's see as well another example of an aggregate function where we count the number of records. Another thing I want to highlight is if by any chance there's any possibility that the column that you are trying to aggregate might have a null value, it's a good practice that you would use is null 0 in your statement. The reason is if one record only has a null value, you're going to find that the total value is null for you. Okay, let's try use the count. So let's say that we want to count the number of invoices per day, like how many sales I've done per day. So now I don't need to link my customer, and all what I need to do is to have my invoice date, and I want to count the number of invoices. I can say asterisk, so I can count anything, or I can even count invoice ID, which is the invoice number of sales. As said, again, if I ran the statement, it's going to fail, so I need to aggregate it by invoice date. So let's see how it works. So on this date, I made 40 sales. On this date, I've done 39 sales. And I can even order by my count. So you can see, like, the default of SQL is that it defaults to order by ascending. If you want to make it descending, then you can just write DASC, and then it's going to do the opposite. Okay, so that's an explanation of the aggregate function, some examples of how to use it, and hope that explains a little bit. If you have any question, please comment below the video. And if you want me to cover any other topic, then please let me know about it. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.